back with review number 2. This one will be on the comic Bitterroot, specifically the second book or the second iteration of the comic. So Bitterroot, the next movement. I would like to start with a little background about the graphic novel or the comic, just because this is the second book. And because I needed to do research on this myself, to kind of familiarize or refamiliarize myself with the plot and the storyline and some of the characters. After I read the first 2 issues, I realized that I was missing quite a bit from the first book. So just a little background information. Bitterroot Family Business is the original book. It was set in 1920s Harlem, and it follows the Sangreys, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, a family of monster fighting shaman located in Harlem, New York. The series was created by David Walker, Stanford Green, and Chuck Brown. Bitterroot explores the supernatural world of the Sangreys that has spent decades fighting off an evil entity known as Genu, white people who are manifestations of hate and racism. And then in the original series, we also learned of the Anxido, which are black people who have also consequently turned into monsters due to the racism, prejudice and bias that they face in society at large. So that's kind of like a little synopsis of the original series, the first book. If you've seen the movie Sinners, I think they have some similar characteristics. When I first heard that Sinners was coming out, I thought it was going to be pretty similar, because I remember it being announced that Regina King would direct the Bitterroot movie franchise, or the first movie at least. So I was kind of concerned about them being very similar, but they weren't. There was a twist in Sinners that was a bit different than Bitterroot, so I'm excited to see that movie whenever it comes out. But Sinners was also a really good film. Okay, so after the background information, I'll do a little bit on, or kind of give a summary of the first 2 issues. And I'll show you the covers. This is issue 1. In issue 1, they jump right into the action. In this story, we meet a group of freedom riders as they're making their way through a small town in rural Mississippi. They ended up being stopped by the local law enforcement, or who we think is local law enforcement, and there's a whole twist in that. At the same time, the other half of the Sangreys field team, or as they're referred to in the story, CRT, Critical Response Team. I think that's a funny play on CRT, Critical Race Theory. I really enjoyed that little tidbit that they added in. But while the field team is out searching for the remaining surviving members of the Freedom Riders attack that happened maybe a day or so prior, I guess kind of the leader of that group, one of the Sangreys, and her partner meet with local law enforcement and the FBI to kind of go over the crime scene and see what leads they have as to who did this attack. Unfortunately for the Sangreys, the FBI has determined, or the government and the FBI has determined that the Genu is no longer a threat and has been eliminated. So that brings in another kind of caveat that they have to get over in solving these crimes. We also learned that there have been 2 other attacks, with the most recent one in this small town in Mississippi being the worst. I really enjoyed the first novel. I was really excited to finish the series. In the process for my reviews that I'm doing now, I kind of do a first read through just to get an idea of the story what I'm getting into, and then I do a second read where I kind of take notes and prepare myself for the review. So that's the first issue. The second issue I have here. This character's name is Mariah. She's like the leader of the CRT, Critical Response Team. And she's the one that's dealing more so with the local law enforcement and the FBI agents. She's facing a lot of pushback from them. I would say that the Critical Response Team were in the field searching for the remaining freedom riders, and Mariah and her partner E2 or Enoch are both kind of facing the same amount of troubles on the road, and in solving this mystery. unless I want too much. In the second issue, we are reintroduced to a familiar ally from the original book. We can sense a little contention between some of the Sangreas and this ally. Although he shows up to help, he is not necessarily welcomed by the entire team, so that's very interesting. And all of this is happening in the midst of a Geno attack, so there's a lot going on in this story. I definitely enjoyed the first two issues. I did read the third issue on my first initial read through, and it was just as good as the first two. I'm excited to read the last two issues, although I'm a little sad because I think it'll be a while before the remaining of the series comes out. But the first two books, or three for that matter, have been really enjoyable. I am still using my notes for my review. I'm hoping in reviews to come, I can just look directly into the camera. I can look up, I won't be saying as much. But this is only the second one, so we still have a bit of work to do, so I'm looking at my phone. Okay. Oh, and trying to improve the review series, I looked up, I think it's a methodology called the SOAR method, where you provide a summary, your opinion, who do you believe the target audience is, and then reasons or examples for the opinions that you stated. So I'm kind of loosely following that. I've given my summary. I would say the audience, kind of like when I mentioned Sinners earlier, if you like that movie, you will really enjoy these comics. Obviously, because it's the second book, there's been a bit more world building, and we know a bit more about the characters in Sinners, where that was the first and last movie for Ryan Coogler. There's a lot of questions that you might have left the movie with about characters, especially because we don't get their full stories in that time span of the movie. Where in Bearwood, well, and I think they still have a bit of deep digging to do in the characters. I think with the second book, we're kind of building on what we established in the first book. So yeah. Next, I think I want to get into my opinion. So in the opinion portion of my review, well, one, I want to say that what initially drew me to this series was the illustrations. It was the cover art first. I first picked up the omnibus of the first book, and that's just all of the issues combined into one book, which was very helpful for me, because reading just the first 5 issues and having to wait until the rest of the release is, and we're in a time of instant gratification and streaming where you can watch a whole series in a weekend. So I guess it will help me with my patience having to read the rest of the series. Like I was saying, the illustration is really what drew me in. It just adds to the storytelling. I'm not sure of the name of the art style, but I really enjoy it. Like from the first book to now, and then with the time change, like I mentioned when I was kind of giving a little background about the series as in whole, or as a total. The first book is set in 1920s Harlem, where this book jumps 40 plus years, and we're in 1964 at the height of the civil rights movement. That's kind of leading into my opinion of the story. I'm excited to see how they use the civil rights movement as a backdrop to the storytelling that they plan to do in the first 5 issues of the series. I think in 1920s Harlem, they use that in the first book. If you know anything about history, like you're familiar with that time period, I think they definitely played to that in the story, and it helped progress the story in the original book. So I'm excited to see what that looks like in this issue or series. How the civil rights plays out in the world of the Sangreas, and I think they kind of start off the book with that because there's a group of freedom riders that are unfortunately killed and now with 3 missing. I think they're kind of really playing into that, so I think that'll definitely help move the story along, and I think it'll be an interesting backdrop for the remainder of the series. Another thing that I really do enjoy about this book is the family dynamic. I think although this is a comic series about supernatural monsters and a family of like root workers working to like help their community and the world at large, I think their family dynamic is one that's relatable. I think while we can see where there is some soft spots, where there's a little contention between certain family members, I think the story does a good job of letting it be known that they all have a very high level of respect for each other and the work that they do, and especially in the generations past. I think that's at the forefront of the Sangre's. Like they're all, even though like I mentioned in the second book where they have an ally show up who is not necessarily, I would say, a friend of the family. That's how I kind of categorized him in the first book. Although he had a bit of a shaky relationship with the family, I do think he's a friend of the family. But even in the moment while they're literally in the middle of an attack, some of the members are like not as welcoming to him, even though they quite literally, he saves their lives. So I think that's interesting, and how they kind of have that back and forth in the middle of all that. I enjoyed that. So it's like, this is a real family. Although this is, I guess, kind of sci-fi, these are, like I said, people that I know, because the characteristics and how they're just portrayed in the book is familiar. So I'm excited to finish the series. This is my second review. I hope that my little editing and graphics that I worked on in preparation for this, I can insert into this video. I think my upload is going to be a little late because I did record this 3 times, just being super critical. But I'm excited to finish this series. The first 2 issues are going to be in review number 2, and then 3, 4, and 5 will be in review